So in this video, we're going to add the text to the right-hand side of the website we're making. So if we open the Photoshop file I made, we're going to add this text here, and then we're going to have it kind of slide in. I was originally thinking of doing some kind of typewriter effect, but I think that's a bit overkill. I think if we do some nice CSS animation, it'll look just as nice. So the first thing we need to do is start by actually, making this text, if you will, and typing it in. So we've got the original file from the last video in a folder I've made on my desktop, and we've run DnaWeb inside the source folder as normal to spin up the, this live server, so we can actually, see where we're doing. So this is using the DNA grid system. So we've got a grid here, a column of 1/2 and a column of 1/2. So on the left-hand half, we have this mascot, as we did in the last video. So this right-hand side, if we just did say div style equals background red, I presume we'll see a big red block here. Just make some content in there. So you can see there's a, this is where the grid is, where we're going to be putting the text. So all we've got to keep in mind is the way we'll do this, because it's multicolored in different areas, is we'll do paragraphs per line. So we'll do a paragraph for that line, a paragraph for that one. So it's, each is on its own line. And then we will use spans inside the paragraph, which are inline HTML elements, so that we can span this while and the bracket, and then add a class to it to color it. And so everywhere there's a class, everywhere there's a different color, we'll add a span around it and style it with a class, basically. So we'll start in here. We'll use the semantic HTML5 header, because this is really, I would say this is a, this whole thing's a header here, but I'd say this is the header content. This is a representative image. So purely semantic, like I say, to help search engines and general code reading. Nothing special about it. We'll give it a class so we can style it. We'll call it mascot code. If I could type this morning. There we go. And then inside here now, we will do, because we want to animate this in, we'll wrap this in a div, and we will add a class. In fact, not yet, we won't. We'll just do, let's just leave it at that for now. This is the div that we will then use to animate in each line of text. So we want to wrap them all so we can apply this style to, an overall chunk. We could technically apply it to the header, but I like to keep the header clean and then the content inside the header. And then finally inside here now we could start writing our text. So we could write while brain isn't equal to false. So while brain isn't equal to false, like that. And then open brackets. I don't know what's going on with typing this morning. My.dna plus equals code. And you'll see I'll add the color in a minute. I don't know why this is trying to end the wrong thing. Let's put one there, that's why. Get there in a minute. Just add a semicolon. And then close the bracket. And that's it. So if we then look here, we've now got the text in here. We also want spaces here. So what you can do is add spaces like that, but you'll notice that won't do anything because it's just getting removed. So instead you can do ampersand NBSP semicolon, which stands for no breaking space. Put 2 of those in each, and that will add, force the white space. So there, it's added to there. So that's got us the text in there. We also want it to be, technically this is filling the screen here, but when it doesn't, we want this to be centered inside its area here. Physically centered about here. So let's start styling this mascot code. So let's open modern 1, mascot code, because that's the class we've just given it. And let's start with text align center. That will align its center, but also align that text center. So it's align the whole lot, if you will. It's aligned, this div inside center. So now we want to align the content horizontally centered. And then the inner div, which is where the actual writing is, we want to display inline block so it isn't 100% width. Take up only the space needed. And then if we realign text to left, it means now the block itself will be centered, but the text will be back to left aligned. So that's now achieved basically a horizontal centering of this content, which is what we want. Then we want to make this font size a lot larger. So we'll do font largest. Should get some nice big text. There we go. And then we want to reduce this amount of space between the lines because it's not that much here. So we'll reduce that. Big font. Reduce line spacing. So that's line height. We'll do 0.2 of the font itself, so a fifth of the height of the font. And that groups it kind of nicely. So there we have the overall style, if you will. We can position this up and down, but I'm not worried about that right now. We now want to color these in. So to do that, as we mentioned, we'll make some colors. So how we've got here, while this first part, what I'm going to do first is take I'll go from here and work my way down, and the colors I find in order, I'll label just color 1, color 2. So this first color will be color 1, then we go to white, that's color 2, then we go to gray, that'll be color 3, color 4 for the red, we've got that. So color 5 will be orange, 6 will be purple, 7 will be yellow. You get the idea. Basically, we work our way through. So I've written those colors down in advance. If you're in Photoshop or whatever, you can just use the dropper to get the color values here. But I've gone ahead and just wrote all those down in front of me so I can type them in. So we're just going to give them class names inside this mascot code. We'll do C1 and then font color. And then we'll give it a color 2E-CD6. And if we save that and then go to say this while, and we wrap this while in a span up to there, that'll do nothing to the text itself. You can see it's not changed the layout because span's simply a wrapper around inline items. But now if you add the class C1, we should get the color. So there we go. So now we just want to do this for all of the code. So brain will be the next one. And we wrap that around class equals C2. And if we were to save that, it looks white because it already is, so you kind of don't see that. Then we'll wrap this isn't equals to in C3, which we haven't made yet, or C2, so you won't see it yet. So jump back to here. Let's just do add all the colors. I think we've got 8 colors. C2 is white. And then we got gray. Then the red. And the purpley, the orangey. Oh yeah, we get to the purpley next. And give you like the bright magenta, I guess. And then the yellow, and finally we have the green. So there's all of our colours. Now if we refresh, you can see that's now the grey. So now it's the red, the false word. So if we go back to here, and it looks a bit of work, and yes it is, but this is a way of doing it in actual code. You could add this to JavaScript libraries and do markup or things, but this is just a splash banner that's done once, so it's just worth putting the effort in. It's not like you're doing this for a huge amount of things. This is purely like I say, to create this banner, if you will, this nice banner. So it looks like a lot of code and a lot of work, but it's just to get this nice effect. And like I say, it's a one-off basically. The bracket is then C1, so we wrap that as well. So we save that. We should now get the first line, which is looking right. So I'll go ahead and just fast forward the video, and you can see me doing all these lines. So you can see now that's the class all styled and colored as we want. So the next thing now is to animate this in, so it slides in and fades up. So let's go to the animations class and start with an animation. Fade in and slide up from below. We'll start with the keyframes called slide in up, and we'll have 0%. We'll put the bottom to -100 pixels to shift it out of the way and opacity to 0. And you could always put a, I don't know, 20 VH for 20% of the view height or something if you wanted instead, but I think this works okay. We'll make the opacity 1 when it's finished. We'll then make a slide in up class that has position relative first. Position relative, so we can move this element because we're using the bottom position here. You want to start off invisible. You want to apply the animation. Slide in up for 1 second and make the animation stick. So by default the animation would revert to default values once it's finished, but the default value we start invisible. When it's finished we want it to stick to opacity 1. So to do that we can use animation fill mode forwards. So now if we applied slide in up to say this class, the first line, we should see that the first one now fades in and up. So if we then apply this to each line, we get them all fading in at the same time, which is not, exactly what we want. We want them to slide in at different times to give kind of an effect. So instead, we'll add a class to the container, and we'll call this slide in up group instead. Then in the animations, let's make another class called slide in up group. Let's select all inner items and add back the slide in up. That should get us back to the start where we have the same thing. So now it's applied the slide in up group to each inner element for us. So this group now here has gone to each top level P and added the group anyway. Now we'll do a little trick here instead. So we'll now say the nth child, so the first element, we'll use an animation delay. And let's say 1 second just to show you. And now you can see that first one decides to animate in at a different time, which is what we're after. So we'll copy that, say 10 times or whatever that was. Oh, that was actually 10 times as well. 10. And you can do that as many times as you want. And we'll delay each one by, 0.1 second different. And if we, what's wrong with that? If we save that now, we should get kind of a staggered load, which is exactly what we're after, that kind of dum-dum-dum, they all come in. The only thing I'd say here is it's coming in a little bit too soon. So as soon as the page loads, this effect happens, and you might miss it. So what you could do, a quick way of fixing that, is you could literally, not increasing values, you could just add a second delay to every, item, and that would then load the page, wait, and then load in. But now you've got a fixed time in CSS, which is not good. So in order to make this variable, let's go ahead and make a in fact, let's see. I know one thing we do need to do here is make opacity 1 for the group, because what we're going to do now is we're going to remove this class from here and add it a second later. So if we remove that class and added faded, it'll start off faded, And then in JavaScript, if we add that class back a second later, we need to override the faded's opacity 0 value. So we'll force it to be visible when this class gets added. And now all we need to do is add this class a second later. So if you imagine now this page is loaded, it's come into here, this has got faded on, and then a second later we added slide in up group. That's the effect you'd then get. You'd actually slide in an up group later. So let's make a new file and then save it. Let's go to the assets JavaScript and let's call this DNA.delay because that's what we want to do, .js. Make sure to add it to our header. So we've got a delay. In here, let's use our onload helper. Once we've loaded, we then want to find all elements with data delay attributes, and that's something we're making up. So var elements equals document.queryAllSelector, and we want them all that have a data-delay attribute. Then we want to loop each element. So for each elements function element, and then elements. So first thing we want to do is add this data delay to our class here, or this div rather. So I'll say data delay equals, and then what we're going to use this for is the timer. So let's say 1 second is the time we want to delay. So now for each of these, we do a set timeout to delay, each element that we add it to. So it can be, many. We're only adding it to one here, but for each one, we want to then call a set timeout to run this amount of time later. So we call a set timeout. That would run a function that would do whatever. And this, oh no, that was right, just that hasn't tabbed in. This then would run, say if we ran this a second later by default and just did alert hi, just to check this is running. And we then save, the page would load, and a second later we should have got hi, which we haven't. We haven't saved this document. Save that, refreshes, and then it says hi. So we know this code's now running. If we were to then change, well, we aren't using this code yet, so we want to change this delay to be the actual value of the data delay. So for that, just do element.getAttribute, and we want the data-delay value. But that's in seconds, and this timeout's in milliseconds, so it's times it by 1,000. We should get the same thing now. A second later we get hi. But now the key is we should be able to change this value in HTML to say 2 seconds. And now it's 2. So let's make it really obvious. Let's do 10 seconds. And it reloads. And then it'll be 10 seconds later, it will run the code, which is kind of the point of why we're making this little mini class. We want simply to have something happen after the delay. So we have an attribute we can now tag to any element called data delay. We want it 1 second in this case. And now we want to say one of the features we want is to add a class, which is basically the only feature we have right now, the only thing we want to do with this delay. So add specified class. So for that, we need to specify a class. So let's say data delay add, and let's do the slide in up group. That's the class we want to add back. So we've made this up called data delay add. Now we want to get that value and add its value to the element's classes. So that's really easy. That's one line. That's element.class list.add. And then in here, it's the class we want to add. So that will then be the element.getAttribute like we've already done. And this time it's the data delay add. And that's it. So now a second later, it should add the class. And it didn't. Or maybe it didn't, we're just not seeing it. Oh, we haven't saved the HTML document again. Save the HTML. And a second later it adds. So now if we reload the page, nothing, and then it fades in. And you can see here as well, it then injects. So that's our JavaScript running. So now we could say, oh, I don't like that delay. Let's tweak it to 2 seconds. Page reloads, and then it comes in, which is too slow in my eyes. But you've now got the power to make use of this little JavaScript code to nice and easily tweak the timing of when you add, a class to here. So it's just a really easy thing. You just tag data delay 1 second, data delay add, and this class will get added. So you can use that for anything. You could have, I don't know, the exact opposite. You could remove the faded class, and you could add faded after a second if you want something to fade out. You can do whatever, really. It's just where your imagination wants to go. But that's now useful for our sliding and up. So I quite like that. I will tweak this a bit more now, position it, style it for mobile. We've already done the mobile responsiveness, positioning like the guy into a full frame when he's smaller, things like that. So I won't bore you with making this respond, this header respond, because we'll do enough of that in the next videos anyway. So I'll finish this header up and commit the source code so you can see the final result where all this responds as well. But the point of this video is to show you this effect and style. So I'll clean this banner up, get this fully finished, make it respond nice, so when we shrink it, this guy looks right and things happen a bit nicer. And then we'll move on to the sections here and make them responsive. And then once we've done all these sections, I've made a few more, which are, there's the home. I've done like contact me, so we can do that section. I've done blog, so I'll do all these sections and make them responsive, but you'll then start seeing how easy it is to build a website using this DnaWeb. So hopefully that video was useful. We've done a tiny bit of JavaScript to add like a delay. We've done some CSS animation, and I've shown you how to kind of style some text nicely. Any questions, thoughts, let me know, and the source code, as usual, is in the comments.